"You shouldn't be here," someone muttered under their breath. But Ariel didn't stop walking. The room, usually filled with low voices and quiet deals, fell into a silence that didn't belong there, not when Park Jun-seo was present. He didn't look at her immediately. He never did. Control in his world didn't require attention. It existed whether people acknowledged it or not. But tonight, something shifted. Ariel stopped just short of his table, close enough to be seen, not close enough to be claimed. Still, she said nothing. That was the first mistake, or at least that's what everyone else thought. Then his gaze lifted, calm, measured, certain, and for a moment everything felt exactly the same, until he realized she wasn't waiting. He thought silence meant control, until he realized she had already decided to leave.
Welcome to Mafia-Seoul story, where power is silent and control is never what it seems. And tonight, Park Jo-seo is about to learn the hard way.
What Park Jun-seo didn't realize that night was that Ariel had already made her decision long before she walked into that room. Because in his world, control was everything. But this time, he wasn't the one deciding how things would end. The voice was low, almost careful, but it carried. Ariel didn't stop walking. Her heels met the floor in quiet, even rhythm, each step cutting through the room with a clarity that didn't belong there. Conversations thinned, then disappeared entirely, leaving behind a silence that felt less like absence and more like something waiting to happen. No one moved to intercept her. That was the first sign something was wrong. In Park Jun-seo's world, movement followed permission. Doors opened when they were meant to. People entered when they were allowed. And when those rules were broken, correction came quickly, clean, decisive, unquestioned. But not tonight. She crossed the room without hesitation, without urgency, as though the outcome had already been decided somewhere else, somewhere no one here had access to. Jun-seo didn't look up, at least not at first. He sat at the center of the room, exactly as he always did, still, composed, his attention fixed on the papers in front of him, or the appearance of attention. It was difficult to tell with him. It always had been. Around him, the men held their positions. They understood the language of his silence. They always had. If he didn't acknowledge her, then neither would they. If he didn't react, then nothing had happened. That was how control worked here. It didn't announce itself. It existed, and everything else adjusted. Ariel didn't. She stopped at a distance of her own choosing, not at the edge of the table, not close enough to be dismissed as a mistake, somewhere deliberate, measured, as if she had already calculated exactly how far she needed to go, and no further. She didn't speak. She didn't look around the room. She didn't wait. That, more than anything else, was what shifted the air. Jun-seo's pen paused, just once. A small movement, almost nothing. But it was enough. His gaze lifted, slow and unhurried, settling on her with the same quiet precision he applied to everything else. No anger, no surprise, just observation, the kind that reduced people to details, to patterns, to something that could be understood and eventually controlled. For a moment, nothing changed. The room remained still. The distance between them held. And yet, something didn't fit. Not in the way she stood, not in the way she met his gaze without lowering her own, not in the way her presence seemed settled, as if she had already passed the point where this room could affect her. It was subtle, easy to miss. But Park Jun-seo had built his position on noticing what others overlooked. And this was new. The silence stretched, thinner now, sharper. No one moved, no one spoke, because something had already begun to shift, not in the room, but in the space between them. And for the first time that night, a question surfaced, quiet, precise, impossible to ignore. Why wasn't she waiting for his permission? He let the silence stay. That was intentional. Silence had always been the easiest way to measure people. It stretched them, pulled something out of them. Hesitation, apology, the need to explain. He waited for it. It didn't come. Jun-seo set the pen down, slow and deliberate, and looked at her fully this time. Something had shifted. She hadn't. Most people adjusted under his attention, even the prepared ones. A change in posture, a breath held too long, the smallest fracture in control. Ariel gave him none of it. Her gaze remained steady, not challenging, not careful, just present. As if this room required nothing from her. That was new. A quiet movement broke somewhere at the edge of the room, a chair quickly corrected. No one spoke. He studied her again, more carefully now. Not what she showed, what she didn't. And yet, she stood like someone who had already decided how this would end. It started with her hands. Not what they were doing. They weren't doing anything. That was the detail. In a room built on tension, people always found something to do with their hands. They held something, adjusted something, created the appearance of purpose where there was none. Ariel's hands stayed completely still at her sides, not clasped, not controlled, just resting, the way hands rested when the decision had already been made. Jun-seo's gaze moved, brief, precise, across the rest of her. The coat. He didn't recognize it, not unusual, but heavier than the evening required, structured, chosen for something beyond a single destination. Then the bag. Small, understated, but it sat against her side with a weight that didn't match its size. Deliberate. He had seen that before. Somewhere behind her, a glass shifted slightly against the table, quickly stilled. No one spoke. The pieces aligned quietly. The coat, the bag, the stillness. Not anxiety, resolution. She hadn't come here uncertain. She hadn't come here unprepared. She had already packed before she came, which meant she hadn't come here to stay. He spoke first. "You came alone." Ariel met his gaze. "I did." No hesitation, no adjustment, just the answer. Jun-seo let the silence settle. "You didn't notify anyone you were coming." "No." Still nothing behind it. No recalibration, no delay. He watched her more closely now. Most people under his attention carried tension, calculation, the need to respond correctly. She didn't. A faint vibration cut through the silence somewhere behind her, brief, silenced immediately. No one acknowledged it. Jun-seo leaned back slightly. "Then what do you want?" "To finish something." Simple, controlled, and empty of explanation. She wasn't afraid. And if she wasn't afraid, then what exactly had she already decided to do? To finish something. The words lingered longer than they should have. Jun-seo didn't respond immediately. "Sit down," he said. It wasn't a request. Ariel didn't move. Not a refusal, not resistance, just stillness. A second passed, then another. Somewhere in the room someone shifted, barely. No one spoke. Jun-seo watched her. "You came without notice," he said. "Yes." "Why?" A pause, not hesitation, selection. To finish something. The same answer. Nothing added, nothing offered. He studied her more closely now. Not the words, what sat behind them. Most people, under pressure, moved toward him, adjusted, recalibrated. Ariel didn't. If anything, she felt further away. Not physically, something else, something already decided. He recognized it. Not fear, not defiance. Completion. That was the problem. She wasn't waiting for the outcome. She had already moved past it. Control didn't break loudly. It went quiet first. And this was quiet. For the first time, he wasn't certain how this would end. And that meant she already knew. "Stay where you are," Juno said. Then he walked out. The room didn't question it. He moved down the corridor without slowing, stopping only when he reached the far end. One call. "I need it now." A pause. "You'll have it." He ended the call and waited. Not long. The response came back quickly, which meant the answer had already been close. There had been movement around Ariel. Not recent. Weeks. Small things. Money redirected. Documents adjusted. Details that meant nothing on their own, until they were seen together. Juno listened without interruption. Then the name came. He didn't react, not outwardly, but he knew it. Victor Hale. Not a stranger, not a mistake. Someone he had already accounted for, which meant his understanding had been incomplete. Juno ended the call. The corridor was quiet again. The coat, the bag, the calm. None of it had been hers alone. Victor Hale had been involved long before tonight, which meant this hadn't started in this room. He returned to the room and she was already moving. Not rushing, not retreating, just done. Juno crossed the room and stopped where their paths would meet. She slowed. For a moment she looked at him. Not fear, not anger, recognition. "We're not finished," he said. "I am." A fraction of a pause. Then she moved. Around him. No resistance, no hesitation. Juno didn't stop her. No one did. The door opened, then closed. The room remained exactly as it was. Nothing had changed. And yet, that silence felt more final than anything he could have said. He stood there longer than he should have, and didn't move. The room waited. He didn't. His mind was already pulling everything back into place. The entrance, the coat, the bag, the answers that had given him nothing. The distance she had kept, not from him, but from all of it. She had come here already finished. The clarity arrived too late. She hadn't come to negotiate. She hadn't come to test him. She had come because leaving required it. One final step. And he had sat across from her and asked questions, tested her, measured her. The thought settled badly. He had treated it like control, like assessment. But she had known what this room was, known what he would do, known exactly how it would unfold, and she had walked through it anyway, on her terms, not his. Something tightened in his chest, not panic, something quieter, final. Somewhere behind him a chair shifted slightly, then stilled. No one spoke. He had let her walk out of this room. If she walked away now, what power did he actually have left? The room resumed. Conversations returned, quietly at first, then with their usual weight. His men repositioned themselves. Someone refilled a glass. Everything moved as though nothing had happened. Juno returned to his chair. He sat the way he always did, still, composed. The room adjusted around him. It always did. But the chair felt different. Not physically. Something else. The glass beside him remained untouched. The authority was still there. The silence, the deference, the way people measured themselves against his presence. Intact, unchanged. And for the first time, he saw it clearly. Ariel had walked in with nothing to lose, and walked out with nothing taken. She hadn't broken his control. She had simply declined it. The room hadn't noticed. No one had, because everything still looked exactly the same. And yet, someone had passed through it untouched. Control required someone to hold. He had a room full of people who feared him, a network built on consequence, a reputation that moved ahead of him. What he hadn't had was someone who chose to stay. He had never been in control, only unchallenged. But what Juno didn't understand yet was why Ariel had trusted Victor Hale enough to walk away.